Sinn Fein have swept to victory in the Irish election, leaving the Republic's old firm of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael trailing in their wake. I asked Professor John Tonge of the University of Liverpool and the blogger Slugger O'Toole what this result means for the future of Ireland, north and south. Join us in the Alex Salmond Show, on air and online.
Welcome to the Alex Salmond Show, where we examine the dramatic changes taking place in Irish politics. This month's election saw Sinn Fein emerge as the most popular party in the Republic of Ireland. However, in a balanced parliament, it is still not clear what type of government will emerge. Today, we speak to two key commentators on what the shock election result means for the future of Ireland, north and south.
This is a monumental shake-up of politics in the Republic of Ireland. For nearly a century, the two big parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, had dominated. No one really thought that Sinn Féin would be on the brink of being in government in both parts of the island of Ireland. Sinn Féin could be in government in the south, they're already in government in the north, and that fundamentally changes the outlook on Irish politics, both north and south of the border.
I think to the political system in the Republic, it's been a huge shock. I think it's delighted many political journalists just because it's so interesting and it kind of so overturns most of the expected outcomes that were predicted at the beginning.
But first, to your tweets, emails and messages on our well-received show on the topic of the coronavirus. Mohab says, this time you covered a sensitive topic. It occupies the current public opinion. Of course, we all worry about the spread of this global pandemic. I hope scientists' research find a suitable vaccine as soon as possible. Thanks for this interesting episode. Gary says, pretty sure it will lessen over the next 2 weeks in China if the figures are correct. Joe says, my mother nearly died of Asian flu in 1957, in response to which Margaret says, I was 9 years old when I was extremely ill with the Asian flu. My mother found me unconscious in bed, have had the flu 3 times and each time still very ill. Susan says, excellent informative presentation. Thank you. And finally, Anne says, great show as always. Well, thank you to you all for your messages. I'm glad you found the show to be so informative. Now, the Irish election results came as a bolt from the blue to the long-established parties of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. They have dominated Irish politics since independence a century ago, but no longer. A party which was a pariah only a few years ago because of its links with IRA violence emerged under the new leadership of Mary Lou McDonald to become Ireland's most popular party. This is a prospectus Mary Lou McDonald set out when she became party leader.
The war is over. And there is no purchase, no sentiment at all that I see that wishes for a return to any form of political violence at all. I think it would be a very, very foolish person and a truly foolish government that would gamble or that would take unnecessary risks with all of that. I believe the peace process is robust. I believe that certainly Irish nationalism is growing in confidence, is very much at ease and happy with the general momentum and direction of political traffic. I am conscious that some of our unionist brothers and sisters are perhaps not as secure or happy with all of that. But generally, I think it's fair to say that there is no appetite for conflict.
That was Mary Lou McDonald 2 years ago. This is how the 3 main party leaders set out their post-election stall in the Irish Parliament, the Dáil.
450,000 people did vote for Fine Gael in this election just gone by. Not many fewer than Fianna Fáil, not all that many fewer than Sinn Féin, and much more than any other party or group of independents in this House. And those 450,000 people didn't vote against change. They voted to say that they were satisfied with some of the changes that had taken place in the past few years, but they wanted more change in other areas, not least in health and housing. Some of them thought that we did a good job in the round, And they're people who shared our vision and shared our values and agreed with our policies and agreed with our ideas. And we will honour that mandate. And I hope that others will recognise that while we may be diminished, a mandate of 450,000 votes is not a small one. So suggesting, as some did today, that we step aside, that we lie down, that we abstain, that we somehow allow others to form a government, we will not do that.
We believe that the next government must be based on a belief that state action is required to improve key services and to address emergencies in housing, health, climate change and the cost of living. We are very clear in that we reject the idea that major increases in taxes, especially on enterprise, can be introduced without causing dramatic damage, especially to workers and to public finances.
And you see, that's really what the problem is here. Because, of course, government formation is about numbers we can add. Of course, government formation is about policy coherence. No one's arguing to the contrary. But government formation is also about power and who wields it. And the reality is that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have run the show for almost a century, and by Christ, they're not minded to let go. That's really what all of this is about.
So what are the consequences of this dramatic election? Alex speaks first to Professor John Tonge of the University of Liverpool.
Professor John Tonge, how big a shock to the political system of the Republic of Ireland has this election result been?
This is a monumental shake-up of politics in the Republic of Ireland. For nearly a century, the two big parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, had dominated. No one really thought that Sinn Fein would be on the brink of being in government in both parts of the island of Ireland. Sinn Fein could be in government in the south, they're already in government in the north, and that fundamentally changes the outlook on Irish politics, both north and south of the border.
Now, we've seen the exchanges from the post-election debate in the Dáil, the Irish Parliament. Doesn't seem to be any love lost between the three leaders of the now three main parties in the Republic.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's huge antipathy from the establishment parties, as Sinn Fein like to call them, towards Sinn Fein. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil won't do business with Sinn Fein. They say they won't form a coalition with Sinn Fein because of Sinn Fein's controversial past and its former associations with the IRA. Sinn Fein's message is, respect our mandate, and Sinn Fein is looking now for a seat in government. That will transform things on the island of Ireland. I don't think there's any question about that, because Sinn Fein's agenda, whilst this is not an election victory built upon support for a united Ireland, it's built upon other things. Nonetheless, at the heart of Sinn Fein's agenda is pressure for a united Ireland.
Isn't there something, a paradox in the view of Fine Gael, Leo Varadkar, the present Taoiseach, and Michael Martin, the leader of Fianna Fáil, to say they won't have Sinn Fein in government in the Republic of Ireland when they were promoting Sinn Fein back into government in Northern Ireland?
Absolutely, and that's a question that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have never addressed satisfactorily, and that's part of the reason why the electorate lost faith in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. You can't say that Sinn Fein is perfectly respectable in the north and that unionists must share power with Sinn Fein, but then on the other hand say you won't touch Sinn Fein with a barge pole down south. You know, the electorate are not stupid. They can see that that's a paradox. They see that's something that it's a conundrum that cannot be solved. So therefore, you know, the electorate said, actually, we think Sinn Fein are a legitimate political party, and that's why a quarter of people voted for Sinn Fein. Now, Sinn Fein must be bitterly regretting not fielding more candidates in the south. They only fielded 42 because the election surpassed their expectations. I think eventually Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael will have to do business with Sinn Fein, but at the moment they're still treating them as toxic. I think they're still marooned in a 1980s, 1990s mindset in their attitudes to Sinn Fein.
Now, 3 weeks after the election, still no sign of a government being formed. What's your best guess as a professor studying Irish politics? What government is likely to emerge from this very, very confused outcome?
I think there's two possible options. Sinn Fein will try, I think, to form a government with various parties on the left. I'm not sure that the numbers are quite there for that, but I think Sinn Fein will definitely try and do that. Mary Lou MacDonald is perfectly capable of forming alliances with a wide range of left-wing parties. If that cannot work, then it may be back to the old ways of a a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael administration. We had in the past Fine Gael as the main party, with Fianna Fáil playing a supportive role in government in recent years. That's hardly had a recent resounding vote of confidence from the electorate. So to simply carry on as if the election hadn't happened, I don't think is a credible position. So that's why I still think that Sinn Fein will be in government in some form, in a coalition, probably with parties of the left.
As one of Sinn Féin's strong points right now is they are certainly one party which doesn't fear another election if a government can't be formed.
Absolutely. Sinn Féin will field more candidates, and I think they'll get even more seats if there was to be another election this year. And that's something that Leo Varadkar, as leader of Fine Gael, and Micheál Martin, as leader of Fianna Fáil, must really, really fear. They know that if they're going to keep Sinn Féin out of government, this is probably their own chance. They're going to have to do some sort of deal together, but I don't think the electorate will particularly like that, and I don't think it will be particularly stable if you have more of the same of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil in government. Therefore, I think that it's quite a strong possibility that there will be another election at some point this year, and all the indications are that Sinn Féin will do very, very well indeed. I think Sinn Féin are here to stay. The idea that this was some sort of protest vote that put Sinn Féin in is for the birds. This is a longer-term realignment of Irish politics, in which we're not talking about a big two parties anymore. We're talking about a big three parties, of which Sinn Féin is one, and of which Sinn Féin may eventually become the dominant party, supplanting either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. This is a longer-term project. Yes, it's true that Sinn Féin's vote was built upon annoyance over issues on housing and homelessness, but it wasn't just a protest vote. It's a wider reconfiguration of Irish politics.
So what does that mean for the prospects of a border poll, a poll on the reunification of Ireland, and how will that go down in the Republic, and how would that go down in Northern Ireland?
I think it's a question now of when, not if, there will be a border poll in terms of Northern Ireland's constitutional future. I've little doubt that in the south there has to be two referendums, remember. There has to be majority consent for Irish unification, both north and south of the border. In the south, I'd expect there to be, on the opinion poll evidence, a majority in favour. I don't think we're quite there yet in the north. Sinn Féin's programme wants a border poll within 5 years. Whether they'll get a border poll within 5 years, I think, is open to question, because in the north, it's within the gift of the British Secretary of State, who may be reluctant to risk one within Northern Ireland. So I would suggest that a border poll is likely, not perhaps within the next 5 years, but certainly within the next decade. And if Sinn Féin continues to make the advances that they're making, then they might be able to win majorities north and south. I do still think they need to convert a number of voters in the north to get them over the line. But people are talking seriously now, not just about a border poll, but about a united Ireland arising from that border poll.
And lastly, Professor Tonge, when you've been lecturing to your students in the University of Liverpool over the last few years, did you ever think it likely that you would be discussing with them the imminent possibility of Sinn Féin being in government in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland simultaneously?
No, when I started out in academia, Sinn Féin were a pariah party. They were polling at less than 2% in the Irish Republic, and they had a vote in the north, but it was always a minority vote, even amongst the nationalist population. Things have changed and changed utterly. Sinn Féin is now the most popular party on the island of Ireland. Sinn Féin will be producing a prospectus for Irish unification as a consequence of its position electorally. And all of the parties are going to have to respond to what Sinn Féin wants in terms of Irish unification, even if they don't welcome the prospect of unification themselves. So it will be Sinn Féin setting the agenda on the island of Ireland for the next few years.
Professor John Tonge, University of Liverpool, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
The new Irish government, when formed, will have huge implications for the politics of the North. Join us after the break when we continue our discussions on the future of Irish politics. Welcome back. In the last few years, Slugger O'Toole's blog has established itself as the go-to site for information on Northern Irish politics. We ask editor Mick Fealty what the result in the South means for the North.
I'm now delighted to be joined by the editor of Ireland's premier political blog, Mick Fealty. Mick, welcome back to the Alex Salmond Show.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Now, this Irish election, 3 weeks ago, Sinn Fein, the political wing of the provisional IRA, the outcasts of Irish politics for generations, become the leading party in terms of the popular vote. How big a shock is that to the political system?
I think to the political system in the Republic, it's been a huge shock. I think it's delighted many political journalists just because it's so interesting and it kind of so overturns most of the expected outcomes that were predicted at the beginning. Many of the political journalists in Dublin were predicting that this was Micheál Martin's Fianna Fáil party's election to lose, and indeed they did lose. They lost a huge amount of ground.
And Fianna Fáil, they're the traditional party of government in the Republic, and along with Fine Gael, their great rivals, have been the kind of old firm, if I can call it that, of Irish elections for, well, since independence 100 years ago.
Absolutely. 1922, Fine Gael's predecessor party took over. They were in charge for the first 10 years. Fianna Fáil were the party that was defeated in the Civil War that came in after independence, and they were set up in 1926. And really, since De Valera won in 1932, they've been the dominant party. You could say the party of government. And unlike in the UK, not really a party of the right, but a party of the centre or the centre-left. And really, until 2008, that pertained. Then the financial crisis came, and in 2011, they were spectacularly defenestrated, if you like. The real shock this time was that they weren't able to build on many of the advances that they'd made in 2016. And I think there was a presumption, certainly between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, that they were still the major players, and if they got one up against the other, that would indicate political success. Mary Lou McDonald Sinn Fein came through the middle and completely disrupted that whole sort of duopoly.
So this is Mary Lou McDonald, the new leader of Sinn Fein, only leader for the last 2 years, and really the first leader of Sinn Fein who had a distance between her and the Troubles. She's the first leader of Sinn Fein, ironic, from the south, from the Republic of Ireland.
Well, and the first leader of Sinn Fein since 1986. So, you know, her predecessor was in the job a very long time. Her predecessor absolutely had to get the authority of the IRA behind him.
This is Gerry Adams.
This is Gerry Adams. So she is, in a sense, a break from that, although she has struggled at times to indicate that she herself is free of the control of not necessarily active IRA men, but certainly the senior command that were once in control of the provisionals.
The Taoiseach, that's Leo Varadkar of Fine Gael, and Micheál Martin, the opposition leader of Fianna Fáil, they went through the election saying, we're not dealing with Sinn Féin under any circumstances. They tried to maintain the traditional position that these established parties wouldn't touch Sinn Féin with a barge pole, but the electorate didn't agree.
No, and in a sense, that was a failure of their own framing. And in a way, both parties failed to come up with some kind of a convincing campaign. There were two things to this. One, Sinn Féin had a huge amount of clarity around two issues. One was housing, which is this time that was the senior policy issue there, and they have a spokesman in Owen O'Brien, who spent a lot of time on that subject, has written a couple of books on it, is fluent and clear. Now, some of the promises that were made in terms of what was deliverable don't look particularly deliverable to me, but it was in tune with the public's idea of how urgent the housing and the homeless problem were. And the other one was the finance spokesman, Piers Doherty, who did a lot of interesting work around insurance premiums. And that really made the other two parties look very leaden-footed. Micheál Martin is, in particularly, very fluent in policy, but really it was a scattergun. And I think the precision bombing of Sinn Féin on those popular issues, I think, is the thing that the two parties didn't really expect.
Are you saying, McFeelty, that it was Sinn Féin's credibility on the social and economic issues, and rather than what you traditionally associate with Sinn Féin, an immediate or early demand for reunification of Ireland, are you saying it was these issues and that credibility, or apparent credibility, which carried the day? Absolutely.
Although it's important to note that those were not the two major things that they started with. There was talk about a border poll in the run-up to the election, but I think it wasn't just health and housing. There were other things. They clearly had segmented. I mean, the thing to understand about the Irish political system is the PR system that we've got means that if you're going to take power, you have to create a broad appeal. So housing and health appeals really right across the country. But they also came out against the carbon tax. They came out and promised that they would get rid of what's left of the local rates. So there was a real appeal, I think, to poorer people in the rural areas to try and get through on that. So, yeah, absolutely. The reunification issue really doesn't appeal on an electoral basis, although they were helped by, at the very beginning, by a very cack-handed commemoration proposal put out by the government to remember the police force, the British police force, before independence, and that did create
the notorious black and tans and the kind of military type interregimental police force who were so controversial in the process of independence in Ireland,
and who were basically old soldiers taken from the Western Front, used to brutality done to them and brutality done back, and unleashed on the Irish population. And that, I think, awoke a latent kind of angry republicanism, a certain angry anti-Britishness that I think definitely played into Sinn Féin's hands.
So here we are, 3 weeks after the election, no sign of a government. So what's going to happen, mate?
Well, we're here at the end of February, and the Taoiseach has already said that he expects to go to Washington on the 17th of March. So he doesn't expect not to be the Taoiseach by then, which gives you some indication of just how complicated this negotiation process after the election is.
The incumbent Taoiseach, Leah Varadkar, being the third party now, both in terms of votes and seats.
Absolutely. I mean, there's an awful lot of negotiations going on at the moment. There are 2 days of negotiations going on between Fianna Fáil and the Green Party. Sinn Féin have already, and the Green Party have also met for a whole day, 8.5 hour meeting. Because the truth is, the point of these negotiations is to see whether multiple parties can get together around a programme for government. So, and the details that come around in such a situation have to be worked down to the absolute bottom line so that the minor parties that go into it know that when they come back for election, they've been able to deliver certain concrete things.
Because many of these left-wing parties were delivered through the proportional system into their seats effectively by Sinn Féin transfers down the ballot. And then there's independents who'll have to say they managed to get something for their own particular part of Ireland.
Oh, it's getting very popular to be not part of any political party at all. I mean, there's a family in Kerry called the Healy Rays. They've elected 2 brothers, and they are absolutely consummate negotiators for Kerry. Not the rest of the country, just for Kerry. And the Kerry people love it.
Coming to what's going to happen and what are the implications, firstly for the Republic of Ireland. This is, and this has been, a political earthquake. What are the implications for the future of politics in the Republic?
Well, it's hard to say because we're still so far away from an outcome. This could really take until April. It's going to be a struggle to get there, and if either of the 2 main parties fails to get enough support from the independents, the smaller parties, the Greens, I think, will go in with almost any party because they have a clear set of policies which has broad buy-in from most of the political parties. So there, you can almost line them up and say, well, they will go in with almost anyone. It's really whether they get to that magical 80-seat point, at which point then the coalition can command a majority in the Dáil.
Why can't they have a minority government? I mean,
that's always possible. You did it in your own career. That's part of how the SNP broke through in Scotland, and you managed to maintain it for, what, 4 years? I think it's more problematic in the Dáil because it's more fragmented. I mean, for instance, there are 2 centre-left parties now. There's the Labour Party and the Social Democrats. You've also going to have lots of different agendas from the opposition. Now, the only reason that we had a stable government over the last 4 years was that Fianna Fáil supported Fine Gael from the opposition benches. There is one possible outcome that Martin may have the moral authority to turn around to Leo Varadkar and say, well, we did it for you, it's now your turn to bite the bullet and do for us. Now,
Doesn't sound like politics to me.
Doesn't sound like Leo Varadkar to me either. He's already announced that he wants to head to the opposition benches. He's hoping then that that will force Martin to do what Martin absolutely doesn't want to do, which is to go into government with Sinn Fein, and I don't think he will. I think the alternative is probably another election if they fail to pull this off together.
But surely under current circumstances, another election would also suit Sinn Fein. They have the momentum.
Well, there's not many scenarios going forward that doesn't suit Sinn Fein. This is the fascinating thing about this. Not only did Sinn Fein take everyone else by surprise, they took themselves by surprise. They simply didn't choose enough candidates to be able to get to be the majority party. Only 5 candidates didn't get elected. So next time round, they'll run more and they'll get more seats.
So therefore, lastly, Mick, what does that mean in the north? Sinn Fein, the leading party in terms of first preferences in the Republic of Ireland, Sinn Fein back in government in Stormont and Belfast. Surely Ulster Unionists must be saying, look, we're going to have to face the reality that Sinn Fein as an all-Ireland party is becoming the dominant force. What does that mean for Northern Ireland?
Well, funny enough, I think unionists are probably more relaxed than most of the people in the Republic. If there's moral panic anywhere, it's in Dublin, it's not in Belfast. And that's because, I mean, I think there's 2 reasons for that. One, we've had an inclusive executive. Now, it hasn't worked very well, mostly because Sinn Fein has been the most disruptive influence on that, but unionists have become accustomed to that. The other aspect of it is that this is a really massive reversal to Sinn Féin's electoral fortunes north of the border, just in the general election back in December, where they lost the Foyle seat by something like 17,500 votes. So I think unionists they've been through peak Sinn Féin as they see it, and I don't think they particularly see Sinn Féin as a direct threat, at least in the short term.
Very finally, when you started the Slugger O'Toole political blog some years ago, did you really expect the possibility, perhaps even the probability, of seeing Sinn Féin in government in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland?
I certainly didn't. Back in 2002, they came out of that year's election with 5 TDs. The following election, they had 4. They lost 1. But this has been building since 2011. And I think it has surprised people in the short term. But in the long term, this has always been the pitch. Power, north and south. And then what they hope to do is to project authority into the north and begin to shape the discourse around a united Ireland.
Mick Fealty, thanks once again for your insight. Thank you.
Cheers, Alex.
Whatever formation of government emerges from the Dáil, the politics of Ireland have now changed and changed utterly. It is generally accepted that the Sinn Féin surge owed more to social and economic issues than Brexit or a border poll. But the fact that the party of reunification is within touching distance of becoming the lead party both north and south has profound implications for the future of Ireland and the future of the Union. We'll soon be presenting a series of interviews with leading politicians and commentators who are considering the future of Northern Ireland. Some of their conclusions will surprise. All are thought-provoking. Next week, we'll examine a thread of radical politics woven into the history of Scotland. But for now, from Alex, myself and all at the show, we hope to see you next week.